Okay, so I think we can get started to make sure we have enough time for the speakers and the question and answer period. Hi everyone, my name is Hajar Nakua. I am the chair-elect and very soon to be active chair of the OHBM Student and Postdoc Special Interest Group. I'm joined by Lyndon Parks, who is the financial coordinator-elect and soon to be active financial coordinator of the OHBM SIG. We're really excited to host the 4th workshop in our series, which is Entrepreneurship for Scientists. And we have with us Navit and Natalia, who will both give a 20-minute presentation and workshop, followed by a 10-minute question and answer period. After Natalia goes, so it will be Navit will give his 20-minute presentation, then we'll have a 10-minute question and answer period, then Natalia will go, following another 10-minute question and answer period. After that, if there are any remaining questions, please do let us know, and you can type it in the chat, or you can actually unmute yourself by raising your hand so we know who's going next. We do request that everybody stays muted unless they raise their hand so we know whether someone wants to be unmuted or not, just to make sure that the speakers have their ultimate attention. And those are really the only rules. We really hope you guys enjoy this. I did want to mention that this is being recorded because many people are not able to attend. So we wanted to make sure that we can make this as accessible as possible. If anyone is a little bit uncomfortable with the recording, please feel free to remove your video. But like Navit said, it would be nice to have video so we can have a more interactive discussion. So I will kind of give it to Navit right now. He will introduce himself and the talk, and then we'll go from there. And sorry, one other thing is in terms of the questions, feel free to ask it however you want. You can personal message myself or Lyndon, who will be monitoring the chat. You can put it on the chat for everyone to see, or you can ask yourself, whatever makes you most comfortable. Navit, take it away.
Sure. Can you give me just permission to share my screen? Before, as we're trying to figure out how I share my screen. So welcome everyone. If at any point during this talk you find that you don't understand what I'm saying due to the very poor English that I have and the very heavy accent that I carry it with, do feel free to ask and I'll try to explain it better. I named this talk, now you can see it, I think, right? So I named this talk Play Well in 7 Simple Moves. And Play Well is the company that I formed during the last year of my postdoc. But before we can jump there, let's start with the beginning. I did my PhD in clinical neuropsychology at the University of Haifa in Israel, and spent almost 3 years working in a psychiatric hospital here in Israel as a clinician before realizing that I don't like the clinic that much. And then I moved to the University of Maryland, and I worked with Louise Pessoa for the last 3 years, almost 3 years, doing my work on the neural networks that govern the competition between emotions, before coming back to Israel in the last couple of weeks and became a staff scientist at the Department of Public Health, where I work on a study of pain. And that's my academic CV. But alongside my academic CV, I also have my entrepreneurship or my industry CV. So in the last year of my PhD work, I started working in IBM as a researcher, and that work led to the development and then the patenting of a system that allows for the tracking and the identification or the being able to name when patients that suffer from diabetes are about to relapse and stop taking the medication. And I'm going to go back to the story in a while, but that was my first gate into industry. And if I figure out that there's, alongside this world of academia, there's also a world of industry that might be interesting in itself, and there's a way of asking questions in that world that could be of real interest to me. I also I'm now acting as a consultant to a number of small startups that are in the health industry or in the mobile health industry. And it's all picked up when I created Playwell. So let me tell you, let's start from the end, and I'll tell you a little bit about what we at Playwell do, and then I'll tell you the story of how I got here. This is a very unstructured talk, so please feel free to ask me a question if it comes up as I go, and I'll try to answer it throughout the story itself. So Playwell is a company that I created out of an idea that I had while working in IBM. And what we do is we use video games to complement and improve the outcome of therapy. And the way that we do it is we give our users a sort of task list that they need to complete in, say, a week. And we also know which games they're playing on their phones. And each activity that they do, each kind of behavior that they're participating in is equal to a sort of amount of a sort of reward that they can get. So we track their behavior, we learn everything that we can learn about them. So when they wake up, when they go to sleep, how much exercise they do, and many, many different other elements. We collect all of that data, and then whenever we see that one of our tasks were completed, they're immediately being rewarded in whatever game they choose to play. And they can switch games throughout, that's not a problem for us. And then we feed all of the data into our machine learning algorithms, and we then learn how to better incentivize our users, but also we learn how to feed their tasks better. So we keep changing as we go along. We always change. We always learn our user. We always change our demands from them. And the idea is that we not only that one user is different from the other, but a user is different from himself in every single week. So we try to learn them as best as we can and adapt to them as best as we can. We were named the winners of the Brain Race, which was held by the Center for Advanced Innovation, which is a startup accelerator in Washington, D.C. We were just named the winners of that. And we're still in the early phases of forming the company. But let's move backwards, and then we can see where it all started. So as I told you, I'm gonna, I named it 7 simple steps, and I'm gonna give you 7 simple kind of takeaway or take-home messages that I found while working on this project. And the first one is dare to be different, but keep in mind that you have to respect others. And as I told you, everything started when I was working in IBM, and I got into IBM and I started working there, and I was helping this team that did the work on diabetics, and they called it behavioral change. And I was very uncomfortable with the term behavioral change because I haven't felt like we were doing any kind of behavior monitoring, understanding what behavior is, or even understanding what a human being is sometimes, and definitely wasn't that much change. And then I asked my supervisors to see all the work that had been done in IBM worldwide on behavioral change, and there were about 7 different projects that IBM worldwide ran about it. And I asked to see them all, I read them all, and I came to my supervisor and said, you know, Alex, had a student in a first year in psychology would give me any of these papers, I would fail them on the spot. They were so bad as far as what behavior is. And I mean, experimentally, we would read them and said, the people who wrote this experiment don't understand what experiment should be looking like, how you really create it, the basic design of an experiment. And I was almost appalled by it. It took me a while to understand the questions and the motives behind asking questions in a tech company are very, very different than they are for academia. And it's not that one is necessarily superior to the other, but they have really, really different aims. But that means that once you move from one realm to the other, you're bringing with yourself something different. You're bringing with yourself a way of thinking that is not necessarily prevalent in the place that you're going to. And we used to be around really smart people that continuously asking a lot of really smart questions. So it seems like the norm for us. But when you step outside of the academic world or the industry world, right, and you move into a different place, that things change. And you find yourself that's saying, wait, what I'm used to seeing isn't the norm here anymore, and I can bring something new. And that's how Playwell started, because I was looking at the project that I was hired to help with, and I kept pushing them to do games in it. I said, we're like standing on the brink of using more gamification elements in our product, but we're not doing it. Why aren't we doing it? And I kept bugging them about it, and I kept writing memos saying that this is how we should do it, and this is how it should be integrated into it, and how much better it would be for the system, and how much more money we can make out of it. But they would not go there. They would not budge on it. And then I started reading more and more of what's out there as far as other companies, what other companies are doing, and I figured out that actually no one is really doing. Back then in 2016, there was hardly any gamification work in health. There was gamification in education and in training, in military, but there wasn't any in health. And I started thinking, okay, why? Why is it not happening? And I kind of figured out what the shortcomings of gamification in health are. And then I said, okay, I can fix it. This is how it should work. This is Playwell. But I had no clue what to do. I had a fantastic, I was working around with what I was believing to be the next Google, and I had no idea what to do with it and how to execute it and how to bring it to life. And I kept asking for other people's advice, and I got a lot of advice. So my next take-home message: find yourself a home. And even that means that sometimes you have to compromise. And let me explain what that means. The first person I spoke to, or the kind of the first group that I created around these ideas, the idea was, let's raise money. We have a really nice idea, but we don't have the IP yet. We don't have the code yet. Creating all those costs a lot of money. Let's go to somewhere and say, hey, we have a fantastic idea. You should put tons of money in our pockets and let us do it. Obviously, that did not work out well. So I kept moving forward, and then someone said to me, you have to first protect your IP. That's the first thing to do, because you don't want anyone to cheat from you. Only that if any of you ever try to protect an IP or write an IP or just look at a lawyer, you know that costs a lot of money. And I didn't have that much money. And I didn't know how to write an IP by myself. And the due diligence on IP means that you need to read everything that might relate to what you're already doing and see if someone else already protected it. I didn't know how to do that, so I could not protect my IP. And the idea kind of died away almost. I moved to the United States, I started my postdoc, and I liked the idea, but I really didn't know what to do with it. But then I've heard that the university is actually having a lot of money to put into ideas and turn them into companies. There was only one small caveat. The university wants 100% of your IP, meaning that you're taking your idea and you're giving it all to the university, and they are giving you the right to execute it. And I was like, wait, well, I've been dreaming about this idea for the last 3 years. Why am I giving it away to the university that never even helped me develop it? So you need to be able to ask yourself, what is around me that can help me execute my idea, and what is the price that I need to pay for it? There's another slide just down below that would talk about knowing your surrounding. And that's what I've learned is I started going to small groups of people who were interested in developing tech. And in one of those meetings, somebody said, oh, there's a thing called the brain race. Maybe you should go and see what it's all about. And the brain race was actually an accelerator, a startup accelerator. There's a dime a dozen. Everywhere in the world that you are, someone's doing a startup accelerator. And if you're in a place where by chance no one is doing it, then there are a few of them going on online. So just, if you have a good idea and you think you can execute it, Google where is an accelerator next to me and join them. And accelerators will give you the tools to really look into your idea and find out whether it is possible to do it or not. It will help you form a team. It will help you kind of drive yourself forward and give you the right connections to the right people to do it. But it comes with a price. I had to give 7.5% of my company to that accelerator before doing anything else. So I was walking around with what was now about 92.5% of what would be one day the next Google. So okay, it's better than having zero. So it's a compromise that I'm willing to have. Again, in this case, I can't stress enough. Google it. There's a lot of them, and the best ones. Y Combinator. If you can go to the Valley, to San Francisco, and spend 6 months in the Valley in the Y Combinator, do it. But if you can't, there's ones online. There's ones next to your house. Find the one which is right for you for all the important reasons, and join them. It will help you in doing the very, very important next one, and that's every entrepreneur that I spoke to, every angel investor that I spoke to, every bank that I spoke to in the last year kept saying the same phrase over and over again. We want an A team with a B technology. Not because they care about the technology, they don't care about the technology and they want to be one, but they say technologies are everywhere. Everyone has a really good idea. Most companies do not create what they actually set out to do. For that, they need a really, really, really good team. And for that, that's the place for you to be creative. And when I say creative, I mean not in your tech idea, but in the way that you find your team. My team is comprised of a person who plays football with me in a league next to my house, Heidi, who's in our SIG, because we had a really good connection in Rome and we had really good conversations about it when we were there. And that's someone I want to work with. Someone I met at a party at the university, and we had a really good talk about numbers. And then someone who my wife introduced me to his wife, and his wife introduced me to him. Be open to find people everywhere around you. Don't be afraid that someone's going to steal your idea, because it's really hard. It's a lot harder to steal an idea than you think. But be creative in finding a team, because you want a strong team. You want a strong team for A, because you want to be able to pivot if you need to, and B, because they're the one who's going to follow you. So if you succeeded and you're becoming the next Apple, remember that Apple kicked Steve Jobs out before they brought him back in. So you want to bring the people who you want to work with, and you want to trust enough to not kick you out too soon from your own company. And then starting in Accelerator is a really good step. But there are a lot of other places you can find money. And for that, you need to know your landscape. You need to read a lot. You need to Google everything. There are startup competitions. There are pitch competitions. There are a lot of what we call non-dilutive funds, meaning money that the government or sometimes private equities will give you without taking shares from your company. And there is a procedure of doing it. And that can be a make or break for a small company, because the US government, for example, is giving something called the SBIR. The SBIR, the Small Business Initiative something, can give you about $1 million in round one and about $2 million in round two. That's tons of money to execute an idea. You just need to know about it. You need to know how to apply to that. In England, there is something called the Inventors Award from the Wellcome Trust. There's something called the joint venture, which gives money. There's a lot of different equities out there that you can get. You just need to know about them. And they all have closing dates. So if you're missing the closing date, sometimes it's a year before you can apply again. So you need to be very aware of what are the options out there. And it's all in Google. You just need to be able to do it. But so far, all I spoke about is how I created Playwell, right? How I joined the race, how I won it, and how I started raising money and created a team. But the beauty of it is that we often speak about the life of startup, or the balance between academia and industry is either or. I can either be in industry or I can be in academia, and I need to choose the track that I'm going to. And I need to kind of make the decision there. And what I want to say is that that's not actually necessarily true. I found that as the more I worked on Playwell, I formalized more the kind of research that I wanted in academia. And I started writing up grants that were very much comparable to what I've done in Playwell. So to explain that, Playwell develops a lot of tools for mobile tracking, for data mining. There's a need for that in the psychological world. We don't have enough of it because it's really expensive and it's really hard, and it's not the kind of tool set that we have. So I started applying for places where my research statement always spoke about developing a program to do a continuous measurement through mobile phone, which sounds almost impossible sometimes. But I actually had a company that does that. And I kept saying in interviews, yeah, I know it sounds really, really hard. And sometimes, yeah, I was in an interview in a lab, and they said, we had a student who tried to do it 2 years ago, and they couldn't, and they failed. So we're not really sure they want to do it again. And I went and said, yeah, I know, but I have a company, and that's what we do. So I found that a lot of the things that I write are actually really related to what I can do in academia. The position that I'm holding now at the University of Haifa is, in many ways, that I am now a bridge between a startup company and a university in developing a game to help the management of pain. So sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes the work that you do in the lab is too far from the idea that you have. But sometimes they can actually help each other grow. They can help each other. They can push yourself forward in both fronts without having to make the decision, I am an academic or I'm a CEO of a company just yet. I will say that with an asterisk, because you will meet investors that will say, wait, if you're not 100% dedicated to being the CEO of this company, I don't want to put the money down because I'm afraid that you're not actually going to use it. And if you meet them, and you might, then you should just think to yourself, okay, A, what I want to be, and B, do I want to work with someone like that cannot see me as a whole person in that sense? Be flexible. Or I don't know how many of you can read Yiddish, but in Yiddish it says, Der Mann strachet und Gott lachet. The man makes plans, but the God laughs at them. We all have fantastic ideas, and those ideas crash at the rocks of reality in splattering waves. And what makes really good companies is often their ability to pick themselves up and understand where they are needed more, or how they can actually benefit more. And I spoke about when I spoke about the 18-bit technology. I can already see that in our company. Our product is what I discovered. And yet I have 100% certainty that the first money that we're going to bring in will be from being a data science company, because other companies are already coming to us and say, we want your ability to do that. We don't want the craziness that you do with games. We just want you to do numbers. So don't fall in love with your idea, but be ready to move as things move around. And that is even more so in the world as crazy as Corona. In March 10th, I was meant to go to New York to meet with the head of IBM Wholesale to strike a deal between a company that at that point had no employee, Playwell, to IBM with thousands of employees around the world, that they would use our devices. And then Corona broke in the States, and that meeting obviously got canceled, and I can't get him on the phone anymore. And that could have been a breaking moment for us. But instead of that, we kind of shifted away from it and said, okay, that one deal broke, so now let's pivot, let's move around it, let's continue. So that leads me to my last take-home message, that dare to believe. You are the 1%. They say that I think something like 9 out of 10 startups fail, and that's true. But one succeeded, So go to sleep at night knowing that none will fail. But more importantly, go to sleep at night knowing that you are the one who will succeed. Because that is a kind of message, when you believe that, truly believe that yourself, you project it out to your investors, you project it out to your team, you project it out to everyone that you meet. And I really honestly believe that because as I told you before, the tech itself is iffily important, and you're always going to change, and you have to be flexible because the world keeps changing around you. If you are a rock, if you are 100% sure in your success, then people eventually will start believing the same thing too. We, Playwell, are not Google yet. We are not even close to being Google yet. And it's good because I can talk to you instead of having to be grilled by the Senate of the United States. But we keep believing that we can make a difference. We keep believing that we can change the world. And we keep believing that we can make a really nice and profitable business. And all of that without having to really leave academia ever. So to end this, my portion of it, before I open it up to the floor and for the questions, I want to tell you that be yourself. Look at the world. You are trained to think. You are trained to be really good at solving problems. Don't shy away from that. Believe in yourself, and if you have a really good idea, go for it. There will be someone somewhere out there who's going to believe with you, and you can make great things happen. And I will end by saying that if any of you have any interest in the kind of work that we do, or any background in mobile development or data science or anything along that line, I'm always happy to get an email or a call and talk possibilities. And if you have any questions, now would be a good time. I'm going to stop sharing.
Sorry, did someone? Lyndon, go ahead.
No, that wasn't me. That was.
Sorry.
Sorry.
If someone wants to raise their hand or type in the chat, we can unmute it, or we can kind of get started with some of our questions. Just to get things going, I can ask, Navad, what are your thoughts on kind of mentorship as you think about kind of transition into more of an entrepreneurship role? I know a lot of what the OHBM does is kind of about mentorship, and a lot of them are in academia. Do you have any tips for branching out into achieving or getting new mentors?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't remember who told me that. I want to say Danny Margolis told me that. So let's just go with that because that would be a nice story, but I don't really remember who told me that. But someone told me last OHBM that if you want to have a good career, you should have like 5 or 6 different mentors, because each of them would give you a different view of the world. So I definitely think that if you have the access point to it, get yourself a mentor from industry. It is interesting to see how other people might see your work or see your CV, right? If you're having one of those days in the lab and you think that the world is crashing down and you're never going to get that tenure track position and I don't know, whatever it is that we do to think of at night when we're alone, having someone who look at your CV and say, "Are you insane? Look at your CV and look how good it is, and how many different tech companies would just jump at you." So that's for once just a nice thing to hear, but it's also nice to have someone who looks at you and say, "Oh, that's a brilliant idea. You can develop that." In addition, there are still, and there was more when I started, a lot of terminology that I didn't understand, a lot of etiquette that I didn't understand in the industry world. And the first time that I was asked to write an MUI, and I was like, write a what, and to whom, and how do I spell that? It really helps if there's someone out there who can tell you that's what they mean, that's what they're asking. Don't send them that slide because they're going to copy out of you, or send them that slide. It's really, really important that you find 1 or 2 people that you highly, highly, highly trust, because in the best case scenario, you're going to make them your president or the head of your board. At the worst case scenario, your idea failed and their company would hire you. So always find yourself someone that you can trust and you like and you can learn from in academia, any industry, and get the full view of things. Absolutely.
Where can you find them? What are your tips on that? Especially for kind of industry and entrepreneurship specific mentors.
Yeah, so get out there. Absolutely get out there. It's harder now with social distancing and corona restrictions and all that, but once the world goes back to being normal in like 5 years, go back. I mean, join Meetup or whatever it is in your country and go to meetings that are around startups. Every big city has them. Join clubs. A lot of universities have them. Our university have them. Go out there. Get yourself in that market. Get people to know you. Even if it's just, once a month, go out to a bar and meet people who are interested in that world. And that you get to know them. If you're lucky enough and your parents know the president of Apple, then use that connection. Don't be shy. That's not the place to be shy. That's the place to be as out there as you possibly can.
A really good answer. We have one question that asks, at what stage are you in with Playwell? Did you land any seed investment?
Yeah, so we are what's called pre-seed or friends and family round. We were hoping to land a really big first grant that kind of fizzled out a little bit, but we're mostly at this point targeting grants. So SBIR, we're starting something called the I-Corps, which is extremely important. If any of you in the United States, go do the I-Corps. The I-Corps is a program designed by the National Science Foundation to do market research for your idea. So you can actually know there is a crowd for your idea, and you get $50,000 for it. So that's a lot of money for a young company. So we are pre-seed, and hopefully we'll secure the first SBIR by this winter, which would give us all we need to get to seed and then round A.
Does anybody else have any questions?
If anybody don't know what a seed, if anybody of you don't know what a seed or round A or anything like that, that's absolutely okay. I had no idea what those are about 6 months ago. Those exactly are the kind of jargon that you pick up over time, and you need to understand if you choose to go into that sport.
Maybe you can explain what those are while we wait for some more questions to roll in.
A seed is, as it sounds like, it's a fresh investment that you get as a company to help you grow. Pre-seed is the kind of money that you get before getting your first big round, and it usually is your own money or friends and family. And then after seed comes round A, B, C, as many as you can get before you go to an IPO, which is basically when you go and you start selling stocks in the market.
At each of those stages, what do people typically expect in return? What in your experience have friends and family typically expected for their input, and what would you typically expect to return to a seed investor?
It varies drastically as a function of the market that you're in. The only one constant in that is that the earlier money is more expensive. So you're going to have to give more from your company for seed and then for round A compared to round B or C. Because you sometimes will get 5 times more money in round B, but lose 10% of the stock you lost in round A.
Yeah.
We have 2 questions. So Daniel Brown asks, you mentioned SBIR in the US and some other funding opportunities in other countries. Could you repeat those and let us know about any others you might know of?
Yeah, so SBIR is the one in the United States. SBIR, I just want to drive that point. SBIR, there's also something called the STTR. It's the same branch, but every single office in the federal government has their own SBIR. The NIH by themselves are like 3 of them. So there's a lot of different SBIRs. You can apply for multiple ones. So that's one. The Wellcome Trust in the UK has something called the Entrepreneurial or the Inventor Award, something like that, which is a rolling basis application. I think it's for 3 or 4 years, like £1 million. It's like a crazy award. And there's something called the Joy Venture that's in Israel, and that's private equity. It's like a private hedge fund that are giving money for companies to develop ideas. So, like Joy, there are a lot of other small places in the world you can apply for. That's more about Googling and kind of finding the right one. You should be on your Google at least on a weekly basis, because you need to be with your hand on your pulse, because things are quick and you don't want to lose one of those closing dates. Yeah, I was wondering if you would suggest the same process for a service or educational-based company idea versus a product or technology. Yes, 100% yes. I would suggest, I don't know where you're sitting, but if you are in the United States, definitely start with iCore. Because you want to know if there is a market for your idea. There is a lot of money in EdTech, a lot of it, and especially now. If you have a good idea for EdTech, these days of Corona, it is booming, because think of the number of kids who are not in school and we don't know when they're going to go back to school. So absolutely do that same route. Find a good place. There are specific incubators that are directed towards education. Find them. See if they have an online program, or if you can move to where they are. I think there's one in Boulder, Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. And just be a part of that crowd. If you know what you want to do, absolutely take the same route. Yeah.
And now that we can do one more question, and then we'll move on to Natalia to make sure we have enough time. We're a little bit behind schedule. So Antoine asks, how do you manage being out there sharing your ideas and products at the risk of your idea being stolen?
You walk a very fine line. On the one hand, you tell enough for people to understand, and on the other hand, you don't tell them enough to steal it. And you count on the fact that a lot of your idea is in your head and nobody else can really mimic it. And if somebody wanted to steal your idea, they could. And even if you had your IP protected, I had a few mentors who said, don't spend that money. Just to give you a ballpark number, our lawyers just sent us an invoice for the IP protection process, which is not yet completed, and it is for a little bit over $10,000. It is very debatable whether that money is well spent, because it's really hard to protect code. It's very easy to change the code enough for it not to be protected anymore. So don't be afraid of getting your idea stolen. Trust that your idea, you are the best person to execute it. And even if someone else is going to try and execute it before you, they will not do it at the same quality as you.
Awesome. That was a really nice answer and a really nice presentation, Nevin. There are a couple more questions, but we can ask them after Natalia's presentation. So Natalia, did you want to share your screen and do an introduction of yourself and your talk?
Of course. Thank you very much for the invitation. Yes, actually, I will try to squeeze in 20 minutes, so we're a bit over time, but I will try to be brief. But actually, I want to tell you quite a lot today, so yeah, let's see how it goes. And it will be very general lecture, so it's a very general, from my perspective, how I see entrepreneurship versus academia, and what are the differences and what are the similarities after what I learned from having my own company and also working with companies. So let me start with briefly mentioning that I was myself a member of the SIG, and I was working as a career development and mentoring manager in 2017 to 2019. Very nice council to participate in, very good memories from that. And then I set a public foundation here in the Netherlands, Stichting Solaris, and actually foundations in the Netherlands are a kind of companies, just non-profit companies, but everything else, like the legal structure, is the same. So other than the fact that they don't have shares, then it's also a form of a company. And then I set a regular company last year. It's called Welcome Solutions, and I'll briefly tell you a little bit about what we are doing. But maybe if you still have questions, you could ask me in the Q&A, because again, this lecture will be very general. Okay, so let me first tell you like what I think about what is entrepreneurship all about. So how can you actually summarize what entrepreneurship means? So just to give a very like general overview at the job market and at the economy. So the heart and the essence of the economy is the government. The government is this pump, the heart that is pumping the resources across the society, and government supplies public institutions. For instance, of course, universities are public institutions. They are supported by government. Then we have private companies, and the private companies actually, they deliver to the government, so they have to pay the corporate tax from their earnings, and they actually supply the government with resources. And then we have us, so the citizen or residents, people who pay the income tax, people who work for public institutions, people who work for private companies. So as you can see, when you look at this picture, there is, oh yeah, and of course, we still have, we also have a group that is supported by the government, so unemployed and retired, so all those people who are supported by the government. But then there is a question, so when you look at this picture, of course, there is a deficit. So private companies, they have to pay salaries to their employees, and they have to pay to the government. So of course, they have to pump this money from somewhere. So the question is where to take it from. So in entrepreneurship, you have to, you know, there is a nice phrase for this. It's being said, expressed as you need to produce value. So what you need to do as a company is to produce something that has value to someone. So someone is willing to pay for it, for your service or for your product. And it can be consumers, and that's called B2C, business to client, business to customer, or it can be another business, and then it's called B2B, or it can be the government itself, and this business model is called B2G. So there are different types of businesses, and depending on what you produce for whom. But anyways, in any case, you have to have something to sell, and it sounds simple, but in fact, this is a big mystery of this world, what this value actually means and how to quantify value. So what is value? Because people don't always take decisions in a rational way, and sometimes to basically predict what people will be willing to pay for is really hard. And I will give you an example. So this is a shoe. So my question for you, if you could tell me in the chat, who knows what is this shoe? What's the model of the shoe? And how much is this actually worth?
Someone said Yeezy, Adidas.
Yeezy, good. Yes, Yeezy, it's Yeezy, exactly. Someone is well informed here. Too expensive, indeed. Great, that's a very good answer. Indeed, this is Yeezy. It's Adidas Yeezy Boost 350 V2 tail light sneakers, and it's worth 882 euros. And it's all because of this guy who designed it. And believe me or not, when this shoe was released to the market, there were queues on the streets, people sleeping for three nights on the street just to line up for this shoe. So it looks like a simple sneaker, but apparently for people it has incredible value just because of the persona of the designer. So So it's really hard sometimes to tell how people value things and what they are actually willing to spend on. And again, this is still a mystery. And now I would like to tell you a little bit about what I think is similar and what are the pros and cons of entrepreneurship. But I think that a lot of things are similar between like Antoine says, the soul is very comfy though. Do you have the Jeezy shoes? Because it sounds like so. I tried. Okay. Yeah, maybe you have it. You're just ashamed to say after after last slide. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yes. So I think that it's good to also realize how the lifestyle of entrepreneurs and researchers is similar, because in fact, the things that are difficult about entrepreneurship for most people who had never tried before and who are not in academia neither are like some part of the difficulty is to adjust to this lifestyle that entrepreneurs have. And we already are kind of similar, like in a way we spend our time in many ways. So it's sometimes good to really realize how similar we already are. So we are already halfway there to make our first income as an entrepreneur. Firstly, well, as researchers, we are really concentrated on self-development. So it's like this mindset that you have to keep on learning. You cannot stand in place, because if you stand in place, your competition or other researchers go forward. So it's not possible in this type of job to really stand in place. Just learn something once for all, and then spend the whole career just doing one thing and one thing only. So this is something we have in common. Next thing. Well, we often like to work with friends and make projects in a way that we kind of work with people whom we personally like and prefer to work with, and often, mix professional private life a little bit. So good research projects sometimes, are created by beer at the conference or in someone's garden at the barbecue, and this is similar in entrepreneurship. It's like there is some layer that is really informal, and these interpersonal relations are really matter, and there is quite a preference indeed, as Navot said in his talk, to find and reach out to people whom you trust. So trust is a very important aspect, and that's why it's often the case that you make businesses with people who you know for years and you trust. So this is again a very like type of a profession or type of environment where this professional and private life come really close. And also a lot of personal freedom. For someone who needs to be instructed, that's a problem. But for a typical researcher, like we are used to the fact that we have to plan every day. So for us, the fact that we don't have guidelines and we have to plan for ourselves, this is natural. So we function well in such environment. And there is no comfort zone. Again, that there is, you cannot really tell the future. And in academia, if we work on certain topic, the climate, like the landscape can change in 10 years. This topic might no longer be trendy and no longer be considered valuable. We have to always reach out for new research questions. The same with business, like nothing is forever. So you have to really update and improve and test new ideas all the time. And also constant troubleshooting. Like the day consists of solving problems mostly, right? Nothing works, and you have to keep on troubleshooting. That's basically what you do for the whole day. And also, yeah, you basically solve problems. This is your job in principle. And again, like you have to constantly learn and constantly improve. You cannot stand still. And then also, when you choose projects, you have to really make this risk-rewards trade-offs, assessment. So you always have to think about, okay, is this project actually worth my time? Because, how much time can I allocate for this, and what's the probability of success? Like, whom do I need? Where are the resources? And where do I have synergy with other people on the project? You have to really plan well and play the probabilities, because if you don't do that, if you just jump on projects just because you like them without thinking about the odds and this risk rewards trade-offs, then you might not do well in the long run. And I think many researchers have a talent for entrepreneurship, but they just don't know about it. And just because they never really saw themselves in this scenario, and sometimes it's good to try to imagine yourself as an entrepreneur, because you might have that talent and you might not be aware of it. But there are some pros and cons. So as for pros, like for me personally, one pro of having a company is that you only do things that really matter. So you don't have unnecessary meetings. You don't have weekly lab meetings just because they are weekly lab meetings and you have to attend them. Like, you don't have unnecessary duties. You're on the survival mode. So you only focus on the things that are absolutely essential. Like, if something is not important, not necessary to do, you just don't do it. And I actually like that. I really like to have a feeling that my whole waking time is spent in a valuable way, and I don't have these time eaters, unnecessary things to do. And what is really nice about having companies, failure is a success. So, if you don't succeed at your PhD project and you change a PhD and you start over, typically, often, unfortunately, it's seen as a failure. If you don't bring a research project to the end, it's seen as a downside. But in entrepreneurship, it's different. So if you failed 5 times and you stood up again from the ground and you still pursue your dreams, and you just took the lessons and you change the strategy and you start over, that's actually a very good thing. So that's actually, I think, very, very strong pro of this type of a job. And the sky is the limit. So, there is no salary scale. So this is a difficulty in the beginning, because before you are able to pay yourself a decent salary, actually it takes a long time. So you might be prepared that for the first 1, 2, 3 years, you might have difficulty with closing your monthly budget, and you will not go to lavish vacation, and you will not go eat in an expensive restaurant, and it might be really difficult at times. But in the long run, if you're able to sell products that are sufficient to pay yourself a salary, then if you improve on your marketing and you sell 2x, if you sell 2 times more, then you just basically make 2 times more. Then there is no sky's the limit. There is no upper limit, and you can just technically. And I mean, I myself, I'm not very motivated by money, so. I'm not. I didn't start the company to be rich precisely per se, but I like the idea that the more you do and the more outcome you get, the more you get out of it. Because in academia, sometimes you have you might produce 10 times more than your colleague, but you are on the same type of contract, so you will get the same output financially. So sometimes, for me personally, this is demotivating. That regardless of how much I do, I'm always rewarded the same way. So I like that aspect, that the harder I work, the more I produce, there is a chance that I will actually get something out of it as well. And also rewards reflect the value you produce for other people. So it's not that, as in research, you promise something, so you promise to do a project and then you get the public money to do the project. But here you have to first do the project, first produce something, and then sell it to someone who sees value in it. So in a sense, this is like an instant validation. So every single time you sell something, you're like, okay, I produced something that someone values enough to buy it. So it's a good job, and I already produced a value and delivered. So I think it's really satisfying in that sense. About cons, first, again, like, it's very long and bumpy start. You have to be prepared for turmoil at the beginning, and you will wait for a long time for your benefits. And second, it's a race against time also, because the competition doesn't sleep. So if you in every area there is if there is a demand, then there will be competition. So again, it's kind of related to the fact that there is no comfort zone. You have to keep pace, and you have to make progress constantly. And also, exactly as Nawod also mentioned, there is not as much respect for idea ownership and for copyrights. And I see that a lot, that people actually abuse copyrights a lot. And I myself, I'm content creator, like write a lot, and I'm always afraid of that because I see that in startups, you know, this culture is a bit different, and there is less respect for ownership of copyrights. So that's true. And lastly, you need to sell. Like you need to be on the selling mode all the time. Sell, sell, sell. It's really very like abstract and very like intellectually engaging, and at the same time you want to keep on developing a company, then at least for me this is it's really hard to you know switch between the two without having any breaks. And yeah, it's just hard to rest from entrepreneurship doing research and vice versa for this reason. You also have to switch off your brain sometimes. So for me, this is the main difficulty, but I agree that in certain circumstances this is possible. And lastly, I would like to briefly tell you that you don't have to live that risky lifestyle. I mean, in general, entrepreneurship is risky, and it's much more out of your comfort zone than many other types of jobs. But you can also grade this risk. So if you set a startup, that's a really risky way, because you have to dedicate a few years of your life to something that doesn't even depend fully on you, because you have a team around it, you have investors, you have other teammates. So it's really risky in that sense. But you can also invest in startups. So in that sense, you risk your own money, but you don't you don't invest as much of your time. It's also time, but it's not as much as running a startup yourself. So your risk is a little bit less. But you also can freelance. So if you have one-person company, then it's less risky because you have much more flexibility. So you can rearrange your company any moment. For instance, if I decide tomorrow that actually to increase the financial stability of the company, I want to start selling Turkish carpets, importing and selling them in the Netherlands, I can just start doing this. There's really a lot of flexibility if you have that little company that you have full control over. So you have many ways of getting out of trouble that you don't have if you have a startup. And you can do side hustle. You can you know, just decrease your amount of working hours and start working 4 days a week or 3 days a week, and in the remaining time do a side hustle. So start a little company and start generating some little profit. Just try yourself. And many people do that with success and then move towards full-time entrepreneurship once they prove themselves and the company actually start generating profits. And this is much safer and much more convenient way of starting than just throwing yourself into deep water straight away. And what I chose, I chose to start small. So I chose also, actually my PhD was quite hard emotionally and physically for me. So I felt after many things went wrong during my PhD project, I really felt that I want to regain control over my life, and I really need to have a say in my company. And I have a vision and I really want to pursue my vision. That's why I started from one-person company, but I have to say that the company is now growing. So I will probably get interns in September, and then from the next year, I'm planning to actually reincorporate the company as a startup. So eventually it will be bigger, but I started really from very small setting, and I'm really happy about that decision. So you don't really have to have to start a company. You don't have to have investment. You don't have to have a team. You can start on your own and then produce on your own, and then once you reach that point that it makes sense to actually incorporate a startup, you can proceed to building a startup. And so far we're doing career orientation courses for researchers, coaching programs. So this is already running. And I'm working on aptitude tests because this is really necessary. some really good tests to help people find out where they should go next. And I'm working on quite a novel recruitment program, and this is probably coming next year. And yeah, and actually I blog as well about careers and science a little bit. If you are curious, then maybe you can check out. And actually, yeah, my second edition of my book is coming soon. So if you're interested, then you might check out the whitelist, and then you will be informed. And actually, I would like to cordially invite you to the webinars we are doing. So every Sunday we are doing an open webinar with PhDs who are now in industry and very interesting careers. So you might join us on Sundays in person and ask your own questions, or you might look at the previous episodes on YouTube. So I have to proudly say that we already have 52 subscribers. It feels like a crowd. Because I just created this channel like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. Yeah, and of course, like I would like to say, we have these courses, and there will be 2 editions of a course on site, and 2 in Amsterdam, and 2 editions online. So if you're interested, then just check out the website. And yeah, and if you would like to see something like this on your university, just send me a private message and let's talk about this. And yeah, with every other question, just drop me an email, please. I will be happy to answer. And I hope we still have time for 1 or 2 questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Natalia. That was so informative. I definitely learned a lot. I do think we do have a few minutes for questions. We are over time, but anybody who has other commitments can definitely leave. We totally understand. But if you do have any questions, please let us know. There was a question.
I'm going to apologize. I have a team meeting that started 10 minutes ago. So if you have any questions for me, please drop me an email or Twitter, whatever, and I'll be happy to answer.
Sure. So nice to see you again, and really nice presentation, Navid.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one question, Natalia, and it is, how does your company kind of generate revenue?
Good question. Yes, that's a very good question. I'm actually experimenting with different business models because, actually, I have very complicated business plan that is basically what I do at the moment and how it relates to these different activities relate to each other. I'm actually planning to really kind of uncover this business plan in the end of the year on the blog, because I would like to first see how it works, and if it works, then share it with everyone. But the idea is that there are a few pillars. So it's also, I think, good to mitigate risks by working out a few different streams of income, not just one. So first I wrote a book, but of course books are not a good source of income, that's for sure. So you don't actually write books to gain on the book sales, directly. You rather you write them to to get recognition, to get invited to talks, to make more people aware about what you do. So this is more like a dissemination work than income. But technically, I'm getting some pocket money from Amazon every month, so it's always good, some money for beers with friends. But it's not something that you can treat as like an income. Then courses. I mean, courses are like monthly group, and now from the fall there will be 2 groups per month, one online and one on site. And other than that, coaching. So I'm already a subcontractor to Utrecht University as an external coach, and these are services that are open to any university. So if there are more universities interested, then they can always come to us. And of course, like if I reach that capacity that I cannot really do anymore because the day is only 24 hours, then I have some subcontractors under the phone. So I will just pass this order, pass the client to someone else, and just get some commission from that. So I'm set, like whatever happens. So that's one pillar. And what else? I'm working on a recruitment program, but it's not ready yet. So I'm already collecting information from people working, looking for jobs. But the problem is many companies were interested before the crisis, but now these companies went on the survival mode. So they're not very willing to employ new people, or at least even if they employ new people, they are not really willing to test new recruitment solutions at the moment. They are really on the survival mode, and they are just trying to get through the crisis. So they are not really investing in the development right now. So this will be probably running next year, but I'm really hopeful for that because yeah, it looks like there is a demand, and like people who fill in the questionnaires, they really like it. Oh, sorry, I'll share my screen. I forgot. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. Yes, so people, yeah, so people really like the question. So they, and I think it's really well suited for a PhD and the PhD mentality, what this recruitment program looks like. So I think I'm definitely going to do that next year. And other than that, yeah, I'm working on a second book. I'm working on some other, it's also about, again, you have to diversify your sources of income. So I'm also working more towards general job search and general self-navigation in the job market. And I'm also working on a new training that is meant more for companies than for researchers. But it's like a completely different story. So it's actually a lot of work. And I'm also working on the aptitude test. So once they are ready, they will be offered as a pay-per-click product that you can basically buy through the website, and then you can pay a few bucks and just get a test and get your results on the screen to test yourself, and yeah, conveniently straight from home, from the comfort of your own home, you can figure out what at least according to the results of the study I've done, what you should be doing next. So that's, I think, very interesting, and yeah, that's probably my favorite project because it's really necessary and like it's not done. So yeah, I'm very excited about this one. So again, there is a few different pillars, and yeah, it's hard to even mention everything here because it's really a few different things, but altogether they are synergistic, which is really important. So if you build a company on a few pillars, and like you basically make sure that you have these different streams, you have to make sure that these projects support each other. So if someone reads your book, maybe they might come to your training because and this happens actually. I heard from some participants, well, I wrote your book, I read your book, I liked it, so I came to the training. And that's the idea. And the person who comes to the training, after we spend all this time together, they trust me enough to then subscribe to the recruitment program. So it's like really these projects are synergistic, and that's what we should be aiming for, because just having different projects, it's not enough. You have to have something that builds, it's just one model. Yeah.
A really good answer. Does anybody else have any other questions? I know we're a little over time, but we can maybe take one more question from someone. The chat.
Well, thank you, John.
Thanks. Thank you for attending.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't have more time, because I could easily talk about it for like 2 hours. It's a very big topic, and I think Navod's talk was very good in the sense that I think we were like covering different aspects of the problem, but it's like very very big topic. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, thank you guys. And if you have more questions, just you can find me on the social media, or I mentioned my email address. Maybe I can mention it again.
Mm-hmm. And if you haven't done so, I'm sure if you've probably heard of the OHBM SIG if you are here, but you can follow us on Twitter or Facebook, and you can just kind of keep in tune and in touch with the type of programs that we have. We are trying to continue kind of doing these online programs as we realize they're much more accessible.
Oh, there is like one question. Is it a question for me? Well, possibly. Do you have a personal mentor or self-trained? Good question. Actually, honestly, I'm trying to be very practical, and instead of just having one mentor for every possible question, I'm like, I have a network of people, and like I always, like, if I have a problem, I always try to think who are the 3 best people to approach with this question, because I'm just trying to avoid this aureola effect, that, this halo effect, that you basically listen to one and the same person about, in every case, because everyone is strong at something else. So I always start with a problem, and then I call 3 friends that I think are the best to approach that question. That's what I do. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I don't want to keep anyone else because we are at 3:20. Thank you all for attending. I hope you enjoyed this and got what you kind of wanted out of this. As always, please feel free to message Navid or Natalia. They're very nice humans, so definitely we'll be more than willing to answer any questions. If you are having trouble finding them, then please find us and we can link you to them as well. And all of our other workshops are recorded and will be on our website soon. So when that happens, you can have access to all of them. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Have a nice morning or evening or afternoon.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.